Okay, so hello, it's very nice to meet you all and have you here on the webinar. My name is Christoph Weber. I'm a solutions architect at Pronovix. You can contact me at those addresses you see here. Don't worry about taking any notes. We will distribute the slide deck to you after the webinar is over, and also the recording if you like. At Pronovix, we fashion ourselves as the developer portal company. We are, to our knowledge, we're the only consultancy out there that specializes in developer portals only. So we have years of deep knowledge how this space works and have worked inside and out with companies developing the developer portals, but also with the community around it to be on the pulse of what's going on, what the requirements are, where the space is headed. We do have a productized Drupal version called Zero Gravity that has many of the features that you would need in a developer portal out of the box. So I just want to give that short plug here so that you know when I bring up the name later, and also in case that's of interest to anyone. Okay, so why are we talking today? Drupal 7 is going to be end of life in November 2022, and Drupal 8 is going to have its end of life in November 2021. And you may ask yourself, wait, this is the wrong way around. No, it is not. It's correct. I'll explain in a bit, and you'll see why this is the case. The point, though, is that there are deadlines when the older Drupal versions are no longer supported, which means we all need to plan now so that we're ready in time. So that's the call to action, really. We have these deadlines in front of us, especially Drupal 7 is going to be a bigger one, and we'll touch on this about halfway through the webinar. Now, Drupal 9 is real today. The fact is, though, according to Dries Buytaert, the project lead, Drupal 9 is really not that big of a deal. We took great pains in the community this time around that it is relatively painless. So even though there's rocks in the water, you can have a nice beach there and be okay. If you have been in the Drupal space for a while, you may remember that going from Drupal 6, you reached sort of an end, and when that was reached, you had to really change gears and go to Drupal 7. That was a disruptive experience. You had to change to another track, to metaphorically speaking, and build on that. And then Drupal 7 reaches end of life, as I said, in November 2022. And at that point, you had to change over, or at some time before that time, you had to change over to Drupal 8. Now we're stopping that pattern in the community. What is happening with the transition to Drupal 9 is that there's going to be a station with a few minor adjustments, and then you keep going on the same track. And so it's forward and backwards compatibility in terms of technical details. So let's focus first on the transition from Drupal 8 to Drupal 9. That's the easier story anyway, and we need to square that away first. So what you can expect that this move is straightforward. There's no rebuild required, and let's take a little deeper look into what we can expect and how it's going to work. What the Drupal community did, the open source project with Drupal 9, is that they took everything that was in Drupal 8, decided a few things that needed to change. They deprecated those parts on the API layer. They brought in new solutions. They also changed out some of the underlying items. Here I have Symfony 3 as an example, and made it Symfony 4. And then in Drupal 9, the new solution is the new way of doing things, and the deprecated items are removed, essentially. So it's an in-place upgrade, if you will. So in terms of details, all new code that was Drupal 9 ready was deployed on Drupal 8 sites before Drupal 9 was released. The community worked out the issues of the new code when it was out in the wild on Drupal 8 sites and tested by some of the more fearless folks. The feedback was provided on the based on this new code, so it could be improved in place, and this kept the community from refactoring too much like they did previously, if you remember the track slide. So it's, like I said, an in-place update until everything was ready, and then pull the rug out that to remove all the deprecated stuff. There are also tools available that will identify and fix deprecated APIs in your own code. And here's a link, and you'll get that later on. I should mention here that the main tool, Rector, was introduced by our own CTO to the community, and it found great traction. It's now being built out and maintained by the community at large, but we had a hand in this early on, and we're proud that we were a major part of this. If we look at projects, modules, and themes and other items on Drupal today, how much ready they are among the top 500, it's by and large, they're fully ready. So you see the green bar here on the side, on the left side, it's almost full at this point, and those that are lacking are expanded on the right. Coverage by Rector, the tool that I just mentioned, is about 3/4. Then there are some that are in orange that are not covered by the tool set, and then the gray are the simple things where you just have to do some minor textual adjustments. So by and large, you can expect whatever you're using in your developer portal, or even in any Drupal site, is going to be ready for Drupal 9. This is a much cleaner picture than it has ever been before, because the community took great pains to move forward. And it keeps improving all the time. Although I should say, this has looked about this good for about a year now. It's, the final pieces are coming into place. And it's largely not so important projects that are lagging a bit behind. So what's the process? While on Drupal 8, you ensure first that your hosting environment is compatible with Drupal 9, and I'll show some details later on. Number 2, you bring Drupal 8 core up to date, which is basically getting up to 8.9 and their latest point release there. Then step 3 is to update your contributed projects to their latest versions. And step 4 is to remove deprecated API use in your own custom projects. So that's actually the big work if you have custom code, although with the tools provided, not that big of a deal, because it will actually provide you with suggestions of what you should do instead, and you can plunk that code in and test it and see whether it truly works. And when everything is said and done, steps 1 through 4, you upgrade Drupal core itself to Drupal 9 and you're done. So it's a very straightforward process, well tested, and has been done by thousands and thousands of projects up until now. So about some of the underpinnings, the components that were updated, it's Symfony went from 3 to 4.4, Twig went from version 1 to 2. There's a minor update to the CK editor, the WYSIWYG editor that we use in the backend. We didn't step up to CK editor 5 because that one is a big change and will happen sometime in Drupal 9, because it would have been severely disruptive for existing site users, site editors. There was work on jQuery and jQuery UI deprecating a lot of its use. The PHP unit was introduced, and the doctrine part of the database layer was massively refactored and much of it removed. And then some other dependencies were done. So basically, to summarize all of this, if this is mostly Greek to you, it's just keeping up with current versions of underlying technology to make it current, secure, and future-proof. In terms of what's inside Drupal itself, its own building blocks, the place blocks module in core was removed. So if you've been using the out-of-the-box, very simplistic place blocks item, you can now continue using it by grabbing the place blocks module from the contributed module space, or you can move up to the layout builder everywhere, which is a much more modern and full-featured experience of how you would place blocks. Also, the simple test module was removed because we're not relying on simple tests in PHP anymore. So that was just redundant at this point. As we go through the Drupal 9 journey and then on to Drupal 10, some more things will be removed. Some base themes that almost nobody uses will probably get the axe, and some other modules and themes as Drupal 9 evolves, and we see that they're essentially just dead weight at this point. They should be largely not visible to you unless you've built on top of one of those items, but you'll be, if you keep reading the release notes, if you build yourself, or if you rely on an agency for all these things, that will be just smooth sailing. Things will be adjusted as we go. Environment requirements are fairly straightforward, really. You see here everything. The only thing I want to mention is the green stuff on PHP. You need to be on a fairly modern stack. Some shared hosting environments and some hosting environments that have not received a lot of love lately may be lagging there a little bit, so you want to pay attention to that support. You also will need Drush 10 if you use Drush, as opposed to any other version. All the rest is standard stuff. If you're not on these versions already, you have much bigger problems in terms of security and future-proofing your stack than being ready for Drupal 9. And you should pay attention to those anyway, outside of considering a migration. Then Drupal 9.1 was released about half a year ago. It brought updates to the robots.txt file that were overdue. We brought in full PHP 8 support, future-proofing our code base. There was some work done on Symfony 5 and 6 compatibility, and the big one from my standpoint is native lazy load for images, and I'll comment on this a little bit, and some dependency updates. So it was largely, let's move forward, let's be ready for the next steps type of thing. In terms of native lazy loading for images, why is that important? You've probably seen this a lot in the past 2 to 3 years on sites out there. When you scroll, that images are coming in as you scroll and they come into view. This has very clear search engine optimization and also user experience benefits, because we're not loading all the images at the get-go because they happen to be included in the page. We're only loading them when needed, which lowers time to first byte and reduces any wait time for a user, so that the page itself paints much quicker than before. So that's a very nice user experience, and Google loves that, so they'll immediately give you a boost in PageRank. A little comment, if you're an Apple Safari user, as of a month ago, make sure that you go into advanced settings and enable lazy loading. It isn't the default yet, but it's a very clear benefit, so you can take care of this on your own. Then Drupal 9.2 brought some security and privacy improvements. They're sort of minor, but important because they needed to happen anyway. It's now fully Symfony 5 compatible, so at some point we'll be able to bring in Symfony 5 and deprecate Symfony 4. The GD toolkit supports WebP images, and I'll comment on that in a second. And significant work was done on automatic updates. However, that's not finished, but that's a very important initiative that we're all looking forward, so that at some point our sites will automatically update to the latest and have the code ready, and you can switch it on and check whether things work for you. So that'll be an important milestone to look forward to, but it's not ready. Just a lot of the underpinnings were done. The release was last month, and it's ready for prime time. Now, WebP image support, why does that matter? It's the same reason of the native lazy loading that is supported in Drupal 9. The WebP image format that was pioneered by Google can make image files about 35% smaller at the same apparent quality as other formats. And it's a very simple equation. If you have smaller image files, you have better site speed, and that means better visitor engagement, and of course, better SEO as well. So this is a win all around, and it's universally supported. Although I should mention on the Safari browser, you need to be on Mac OS Big Sur, the current version. And you can check how much that has been adopted if that's of concern, although there are also polyfills available. But in my book, this is also a very big win to make your users happy. Something to look forward to in the next few releases is a new backend theme. It's called Claro. It's not ready fully yet. There are a few last things that need to happen. The big thing here is it looks more modern. It's a little more airy, but the big item is it's 100% accessible with everything that you need for the full WCAG 2.1 accessibility compliance, which is massive in a backend theme when you administer a large system like Drupal. And that's also why it's not fully ready. There's some edge cases that need quite a bit of TLC until they're really compliant. But it's going to be a big change in the backend. It will look fresher, and it will enable good access for all of your site administrators and content editors, regardless of their special needs in terms of, whatever that is, screen readers, minimal flashing, all those things that are nice to take care of so that everybody has a fair chance to use a website. So in conclusion then, Drupal 8 to Drupal 9 is a smooth transition. There are very few nasty surprises, and those that are minor to take care of. It's just going through the steps, taking care of them, and you're good to go. You're on the new platform. And that's also what we can look forward to as we look to Drupal 10, when it eventually will be released, in Drupal 11 after that. That's how the project is going to move forward. So what can you expect if you're a Pronovix customer on Zero Gravity and are supported? There is nothing you need to do. It will just happen when we release the Zero Gravity product 3.0, which will be in a few weeks, likely. So it just happens. We took care of all the code builds in the back, including your own custom code. If you're on our product without support, you follow the 5 upgrade steps. If you're capable on your own or feel up to it, or you ask us for an upgrade quote, and like I mentioned before, this won't be a big deal. Just a bit of largely QA work and a bit of adjustment on custom code. If you're on a generic Drupal 8 developer portal, it's the same message. You follow the 5 upgrade steps if your team is up to the task, or you ask us or another Drupal shop for an upgrade quote. And again, it's not a big deal. It's just some adjustments. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, Drupal 7 to Drupal 9. And you will remember the train track image that I showed. It is not straightforward. I think this much is clear. You will need some planning and some effort. So let's take a deeper dive and look at the details here. So here's the slide with the tracks, right? There's Drupal 7 end of life, and there's a new track with Drupal 8. So what that means is that Drupal 7 to Drupal 9 is a big lift. There is no two ways about it. I don't want to sugarcoat this one. There are massive changes in Drupal core from 7 to 8. It was modernized, which is a big win, absolutely, but it does require module rewrites to deal with the new underpinnings, and it very often results in a site rebuild and content migration. Also, the Apigee integration, if that's the gateway that you use in the backend, was completely refactored. This is, again, technically a really big win, but in practical terms, it requires a complete reconfiguration. And we're not quite sure what the support of the Apigee Edge module in Drupal 7 was for Apigee X and hybrid. So, there's some stuff there that we're not quite clear. So if you intend to stay on Drupal 7 for a while, but you want to migrate forward on Apigee from Apigee X Edge to X and or hybrid, you want to carefully check there. We're not clear ourselves there. So, the unfortunate thing here is it's often the wisest to just rebuild the site, although I would rephrase that slightly and say, let's not talk just rebuild, let's talk about reimagine what your developer portal could be if you had a chance to rethink it. So that brings up the question, if you have to rebuild, should you leave Drupal? I mean, there are enticing opportunities out there. There's the Jamstack that is modern and has a decoupled architecture and has all the buzz. Clearly, I mean, we're not blind to that. There are also cloud-based SaaS solutions that are technically easy and make the tech all someone else's problem. There are things, though, that still speak to sticking with Drupal. Number one, of course, Drupal is really flexible and extensible. I don't think anyone doubts that at this point because it's been proven over and over. It's also a proven system. It's out there in millions of websites and thousands of developer portals. It works, and again, because of its extensibility, can grow with you and come along for the journey. And then lastly is a thing that I want to paint a bit more color around is that we are able to support 3 content authoring experiences inside Drupal. The first one is CMS-based authoring. That's what you have natively in the system. That one fits the marketer or evangelist persona, and also, of course, one-off pages. Most developer portals support some sort of docs code that fits the developer persona. And then we can also support API-based authoring, which fits tech writers really well. And as one of our clients put it when she talked about what she envisages and wants to do is meet your authors where they are. So to talk in more detail, CMS-based authoring is a tight coupling between content model and UI, and you publish directly in the same system. That we've all seen this if we've been on Drupal, right? Docs as code, that's typically a code repository under Git control or a file-based CMS or something, and a CI/CD process to publish all this. And then API-based authoring, that's typically a command line or endpoint as an interface, and it brings in content that has been pre-written and pre-configured. So if you look at various platforms and you compare them in a SaaS-based offering, Docs as code, of course, is native. You can have CMS-based in some of them, not all of them. API-based authoring is not going to be there ever. That's just not a thing. If you look at a native developer portal inside of a gateway like Apigee's or anyone else's, MuleSoft, what have you, Docs as code, of course, is table stakes. That's what they're built around. CMS-based is possibly available, but API-based, likely not. I'm a bit more cautious here. Instead of putting a red X, I'm giving you a blue. Not quite sure, but I'm almost certain that we could put a red X there. In Drupal, like I said, we can support all of them. And the native one, of course, is the CMS-based. If you marry a Jamstack, a decoupled front end to the CMS, of course, you get the same situation at the price of developing 2 systems and maintaining 2 systems. So that might be enticing, just a bit less cost effective. And then if you go with a Jamstack with a static backend, sort of a site building experience based on code, then Docs as code, of course, is native in there. You can do API-based, likely, because it fits in nicely into the tech stack, but you will never get the CMS-based authoring and the one-offs and the quick changes. So those are the trade-offs of the various platforms. The way we see it, but depending on what your requirements are, might be a strong argument to stick with a CMS like Drupal. I should also add another plug here. If you're envisaging staying on Drupal and moving to Drupal 9, you might want to consider a ready-built product like ours, because there are a lot of features already in there that you don't have to worry about because they're there. They're natively in there out of the box, and you just fill in content and you're good to go. So once you're on Drupal 9, you will be on a solid platform. I think we can agree on that. Going forward, there will be minimal disruptions because what we see from Drupal 8 to Drupal 9 will be solidified and streamlined and will be the new normal. It's ready for growth, as I said, because it's still extensible. It can still do a whole lot of additional things for you. It can absorb millions and millions of page hits, all these fine things. And of course, you have all the other benefits of one of the largest open source ecosystems on the planet, of which one is because it's open source, you can fire your provider and hire another one, or your team and get another one and move on, as opposed to being beholden to a proprietary platform. And when you fire the provider, you're going to rebuild on a different system. So that gives you, in my mind, all the benefits, a lot of benefits, and a good incentive to stay on the platform. So again, it's time to plan. If you're on Drupal 7, end of life is in November 2022. So plan now, figure out how you want to execute over the next 16 months so that you'll be ready in time. Because once Drupal 7 is end of life, in terms of especially developer portals and your coupling to your gateway or APIs, that will completely end. There are no, the long-term support won't be there. Drupal 7 itself may have some long-term support, but there's many of the core features that you rely on will not be there. So you really should plan that move right now so that you're going to be ready. So with that, we're at the end of my slideshow, and we'll open it up for questions from everybody.